Good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning. Either way? No? Small room, I'll just speak up. How's that? Does that work? Hello. Indeedians. How much time and effort did it take to come up with that?
Yeah, it's probably a short list of options, but that's what we landed on.
Yeah, that's what I know.
Do you like it?
I always laugh at when you hear about companies who come up with those. Obviously, every one of us probably has those in some way, shape, or form. And sometimes the stories are incredibly elaborate as to how they came up with, and other ones are like, nope, the CEO said this, and that's what we went with, and we just moved forward. So I was curious.
Pretty easy.
Curious if there was a fun story. No?
Not on Indeedians. We do have an internal mascot called Jobby, which is a little penguin. That's a kind of a fun story. Yeah. No, Indeedians pretty straightforward, and people are super proud at the brand and like really identify with the brand. I think the mission, what we do, is so grounded in people's lives, making people's lives better, that people are really proud to call themselves Indeedians. So it didn't take a lot of nudging for it to really catch on.
It's true. If you see around the building, I'm sure our mission, we help people get jobs everywhere. There was a story behind that, which was, I think South by Southwest was happening, and Indeed had decided to participate. And they're like, well, we need to make some T-shirts or something, like, you know, to be a cool tech brand, you got to have the T-shirt. And then someone wrote up the mission on this blue shirt, and it's like never been changed since. Like, and that is why a lot of people who, or probably everybody who comes to work for Indeed, is to help people get jobs. And I mean, I remember when I was interviewing here, as a brand person, you know, you really look at like what is the foundation that you have to build upon, what's the DNA of the company, and you never know if it's just lip service. You know, a lot of people on their website say, here's what we do, and then I came here and literally every single person that I talked to talked about our mission and helping people get jobs. So made it a really easy foundation to go and build upon.
Is it fair to say your website is Smiley Happy People? Because every website should have Smiley Happy People on there, right?
That sounds
Actually.
I say that for everyone in the company, right? I don't know that we've ever seen a B2B website that doesn't have a nice diverse group of audiences all smiling, looking at their phone as if they solved the world problems because of your product. Mine is the same way, so I promise.
We do solve the world's problems.
That's true. You guys do actually in a more meaningful way at something too, which we'll get into right now. But let me at least introduce myself. Guys, good morning. My name is Joseph Dressler. I run sales for a company called Adform. And if you do any sort of programmatic advertising, I would challenge you to think about your reach and frequency control and data insights. You're likely not getting the controls that you need, and you deserve it. If you want to learn more, I'll be here all day for like breakout sessions. So really quickly, Jennifer and Patrick, what do you guys do for the room, just so people can understand your backgrounds, and let's dive more into what being an Indeedian means. I'm going to use that term as much as I possibly can. And obviously, like you said, the whole background of the company.
Great, yeah. So I lead our global brand marketing and creative teams, and have been here, I guess, almost 8 years, which is a little crazy. And so I look at my job as taking all of the great things that are happening inside of the company, our mission, our values, our desire to like champion job seekers. That kind of makes us unique too as a marketplace brand. Like we chose to be on the side of the job seeker and help people get jobs. So I see mine and my team's job as how do we take that mission out to the world in a way that resonates, in a way that's championing job seekers and really making connections across all of our different channels in the most creative and impactful way possible. How would sum it up?
Yeah, and I'm Vice President at Adform. We call internally job seeker marketing. Kind of maybe the best way to describe it would be consumer marketing. The way to think about Indeed is through a marketplace for hiring and matching, and so we have employers who post jobs and job seekers who come to apply to those jobs. So my team is focused on attracting and retaining as many job seekers for Indeed as possible. We have over 300 million unique users per month. We drive 25 hires per second globally. So it's a really, really big global task and a really exciting task because we seek to really address the full labour market, all people, all types of career stages, all types of jobs. And we work very closely with Jennifer's team, which kind of sits across the employer and the job seeker side of things, you know, from a brand perspective.
Two comments really fast. One, I love the per second stats. I love when technology companies have those kind of things.
Yeah.
It just makes it so much more real for many of us, right? It puts it in perspective. In the elevator today, the one I saw was Zelle does $1.8 million per second in moving money around.
Wow.
I was like, that seems like a really large number. Like they've really grown. So that's what, when you said it, I was like, oh, that's the second connection today, like on a per second basis. So you guys are a marketplace bringing really buyers and sellers together, job seekers, job searchers right together. I have personal experience. My girlfriend owns Pilates studios, and we use you guys all the time as our #1 source. So it's fun to come here and talk to you guys about it. I kind of feel like you're a chicken and egg though situation, right? Because as someone who might be looking for a job, right, I want to go to a place that has the most jobs for me to look at,
Yeah.
right? But the people who are going to post jobs only want to post them if there's lots of people looking for jobs. So how do you guys handle that as a corporate ethos?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. When Indeed is celebrating its 20th anniversary, which is this year, and when it started in 2004, the focus was to be as comprehensive a search engine for jobs as possible. And that's still very, very important for us to have the widest job inventory, so that whatever you're searching for, whatever geography, whether it's a tiny rural town or a big metropolis, you're going to find a suite of jobs. So we have like various departments who are really focused on making sure when you look on Indeed, that is truly the landscape of real quality jobs. And also we have a team that would fight scam and spam to make sure it's like a very clean reflection of the economy. So the short answer is we focus on what we call internally comprehensiveness and just having as many jobs as possible. And then you're right, what brings job seekers to Indeed is just a very focused experience and the trust that we're going to present the reality of the job landscape to them. And there's just lots of ways to easily apply, to save jobs, to prepare for interviews. But it's true, I think without that focus on the job inventory and thinking about balancing the marketplace, we probably wouldn't have got to where we are today.
Generally, yeah, you're good.
I think you covered that well. I would say at a brand level, to Patrick's point, one of the biggest challenges is we're here to help all people get jobs. It's like the challenging of opportunities. Any brand builder knows it's hard to be all things, all people. So we're always looking at how do we find commonality across all different job seekers and what's important to them. Our big brand campaign is how the world can work better. Lots of debate on is the word can right, or should we say it works better, because Indeed's here, of course. But it's going to be this constant journey of making the world work better and really understanding across all of our different job seeker segments, like what does working better mean to you. And what we found is it's, if you were to theme it, it's opportunity. Everybody, I think it was 70% of people in this global survey thinks that there's a better job out there for them. And almost 80% said that having that better work leads to better lives. So we're looking at how do we connect across all of this different job seeker type to balance the marketplace. Other things we found were important were transparency in the job seeking process. So they want to understand, no matter the category and the industry, what's my salary going to be? What is the culture of that company? And then the third was just overall kind of well-being. So I guess we have all of these segments that we're trying to certainly balance the marketplace around, but at a brand level, it's what is the commonality between them to bring them all to Indeed.
I wonder if that 70% number is the idea that humans always like to believe the grass is always greener.
Yeah, true.
Right? Because we also know many of our friends, maybe ourselves, don't call yourself out, that's not the point, right? Who have changed jobs because you're this is the right time, or I just don't like my boss, or whatever the case is. And you find the next job and you're so excited, and a week or two in, you're this was not the right decision whatsoever. So I'm always curious where that falls.
Yeah.
And Jennifer can speak to this, but we've always made a very conscious decision with our marketing to lean into the optimism and the future of what you're going to get from job search. And we've seen competitors who kind of will play on the I hate Mondays, time to get a new job, and we've never taken that route. And we think there's a lot of power in leaning into the potential and the optimism that people think about in their career journey as well.
So kind of personal growth in that sense,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, and just the personal nature of your career journey. And I think a lot of the research we see is that increasingly people think about a career. It doesn't have to be classically linear,
Right.
or a reflection of what you did in college. You can change, you can go lateral to go upward ultimately. So there's just a lot of change that we're a part of in the way people think about work, which is the kind of the texture and the context to the brand's work as well.
I know when I talk to certainly for myself, when I talk to my friends and family about jobs and opportunities, I mean, if you guys equate it the same way, it's kind of like buying a house or an apartment or a dwelling, whatever, wherever you live. I'm in New York, so I buy lots of condos, not lots. I live in a condo, not lots. It'd be great if I did. But the point is, a house is only worth what a buyer's willing to pay. And a job is only as great as the one that's open at that moment. So you might be like, this is the company I want to work for, this is the job opportunity I'd love to have, but it's never available. And therefore, it's not real at that point, right? Also, like, you might look at a house down the block and be like, I can't wait to buy that house one day. But the people who live there are 27 and they're going to leave when they're 70. I'm making that up, of course, just for simplicity purposes. So I think you guys are an interesting role. That's why I like your optimism points. Because it is about what's in front of you that's opportunistic, not trying to escape something in that scenario.
Yeah, I think there's a big shift in a lot of marketplace products, but we're one of them in that it's incumbent upon the platform and the product to drive relevant, timely recommendations. Because to your point, like, you could be a really diligent job seeker and try and go in every day and see what jobs are new to your preference. But actually, it's much more effective with the product to say, oh look, this new job for the salary range, for the geography that you desire is now available. So we're really focused on pushing those recommendations, whereas maybe 10, 15 years ago, we were more of a classic search engine.
Sure.
Yeah. I was just say one of the other things we're focused on related to that is skills first hiring. So as I was talking about like how the world can work better and people looking for opportunity, one thing that we hear from people, and I'm wondering if this is something you guys relate to, where you kind of get put in a box. It's like, okay, you did advertising there for your next job. It needs to be an advertising there. Maybe you can be a junior creative director than a senior creative director. And people, to Patrick's point earlier, people, their careers are looking different. They're calling it like a portfolio career, like you can do more than one thing. And so one of the areas we're really doubling down on is skills first hiring and helping workers and employers match up based on skills. So, as a brand person, perhaps I would, do well in corporate strategy or sales. I don't want to be in sales, but it's like really looking at what are some skills that could transfer. And I'm really excited about that and a product we're going to be launching around that called Pathfinder, which is just going to help people really identify what are those skills, what are some other potential. You talk about the job you want, but it's not available. It's like, what are the other jobs where you might not even know that you want them because you've never thought about yourself in that way, but it really opens up so much more opportunity from that perspective.
Without calling anybody else out in the room, I mean, certainly for myself, I think about the idea of the linear path, right? You grow within a path that people find success. It'd be interesting because you guys are the marketplace, right? You don't control either side in that scenario. The cultural aspect of the people who are hiring, to then look at the products that you're building and say, oh wow, Patrick, if I blinded who it was, right, but I looked at his skills, it matches up perfectly with the thing I want. Oh, but I just checked his resume, he's never done this role before. Right? There's a massive, in the country, right, well, probably all of our companies, a really big cultural change that needs to happen. I love the direction you're going, but boy, it's going to take some time for culturally the country or the world to kind of catch up. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. We like to encourage that conversation, encourage transparency about changes in the way people hire and the way people think about who the best candidate is. And I think we've got a really encouraging backdrop to that. We've seen all the changes around salary transparency in the last decade. I mean, a decade ago was a total taboo to even talk about until maybe the final round of an interview. And now you see very openly the pay range on job listings. And that's
required in some states.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's good to see that change happen relatively quickly, and that empowers job seekers and also enables you probably to get more relevant candidates and get to the right applicant quicker. So I'm bullish about the changes that are happening, and they're coming from both sides.
I also think, and it's an excellent point, and it is true, one of our biggest opportunity is on the employer side in getting people, for example, to remove degree requirements. So it's over 50% of the workforce are we're working with this group called Opportunity at Work, and they've defined them STARS, which is skill through alternative routes. And that's over 50% of the workforce. And so if you're screening people out because they don't have a college degree, you're really missing out on some great talent. And so that is a message. We just had our big FutureWorks conference a couple weeks ago. It was a main stage message that we tried to get across to employers. Employers are interested in that. We had a lot of people sign up to want to hear more around STARS and the tools that they can provide on that. There's a great campaign that, again, we're a part of with Opportunity at Work called Tear the Paper Ceiling. And so a lot of media dollars, there are a lot of big corporations behind it trying to spread the word that, honestly, a degree is not the only way, to success. We're also, if you think about the future of work and where things are headed, there is going to be a labor shortage. People are aging out of the workforce. AI is going to disrupt the workforce, and so new skills are going to be needed. So, a lot of people who might have had a college degree in something, those skills or experience may not be as relevant anymore. And so I think part of it too will be employers are going to need to look outside of the way they have approached finding talent, in the past and look at new ways. And that's why, again, I think the skills first hiring is the future of hiring.
No, I definitely find it fascinating. I think we've been talking around a question I definitely wanted to ask you guys, and Patrick, you kind of explained it before, like, as a marketplace, I think of Craigslist as a marketplace, right? eBay's a marketplace, Amazon's a marketplace, you can go through hundreds of lists there. And the experience is very different, not just because of the products in the marketplace, but the actual consumer experience itself. You guys obviously compete with a multitude of companies. This question isn't meant about your competitors, but how do you think about product innovation in your space?
Okay. Yeah, I think we kicked off by saying one of the things that's exciting for us is we just have a very strong internal North Star around helping people get jobs, and we actually have an internal goal around the number of hires we drive. And we also talk frequently about doing what's best for the job seeker. So that actually really informs product innovation and development, because we believe that if we continue to innovate on the job seeker search and apply experience, we are going to retain our global leadership in terms of job seekers and job seeker growth. So that is ever present when we think about products. I sometimes get questions like, "Oh, have you ever thought of asking for paid subscriptions for job seekers?" And we've very clearly taken a stance not to do that historically, because we want to have an open access product and we want to deliver a great experience. And to your earlier point, if we're the place where we have more candidates than anywhere else, that on the employer side keeps clients in the relationship. So yeah, for us it's exciting to have a mission that also informs product development, as well as can be a very authentic external piece. So there's lots of decisions we've taken that maybe aren't always optimizing for short-term revenue, but are optimizing for a long-term relationship, for example. So we're very thoughtful about how our search algorithm works and the kind of jobs that we show, and having that balance between organic and paid listings, for example.
Some people have said marathons run one step at a time.
That's right.
That's true. Yeah, and I'll just build off what Patrick said about how when you have a really clear mission and set of values, and you know that what you're there for, which is for us changing the job seeker, it makes it easier to innovate. And as I was saying, we've heard from people, they care about opportunities, which is where our skills first hiring and the Pathfinder product we talked about comes into play. Transparency, Patrick was talking about salary transparency. We have tools around that. We also are, one of our sister companies, Glassdoor, has started creating communities where you can connect in with either people from your company or just within the industry and have conversations with people, again, to bring transparency as what it's like within these different work cultures. And then the other tool that we're both big fans of is called, we have a work well-being score that enables employees of a company to go in and rate what it's like to work at the company on different dimensions, like inclusivity and feeling like you're valued and things of that nature, as well as commentary. And there's a work well-being score, and that's something too that we're bringing more closely into the search process when it comes to looking for jobs, because we know that that's what people care about. So I would say that's what drives our innovation, is what do people care about, how do we champion job seekers and help them find that next better job.
Very cool. Before we transition into any sort of advertising and marketing, because that's always a big topic for many people in the room, I like to ask fun questions when it comes to innovation. Of course, never share anything you're not allowed to share. That's not the point of the question. But we learn from success, right? People love learning from success. But success can happen by accident sometimes. You can be right space, right time, but actually have the wrong product and still work. But failure almost always happens for a reason. Do you guys have any interesting stories about product innovation where you're like, I thought we were on top of this, but when we launched, or tried something new, you're like, this ended up not being the right thing. Again, don't share anything you're not supposed to share, but usually a lot of people in the room will learn to be like, oh wow, I can understand why they thought that was going to work, but interesting to see it didn't work. Anything come to mind?
Well, I would certainly agree that we test and experiment year round and have done so for the life of the company. So there are lots of product experience experiments that we've looked at various times and decided that like ultimately it's not driving that higher outcome for employers and job seekers. And we've certainly done a lot of work in like the virtual interview space, particularly during the pandemic, where like people were increasingly screening only on video. But what we also found is that people, for a lot of roles, still really want an in-person interview, or are more apt and ready just to use the proprietary like Zoom and Google Meet tools. They didn't necessarily want to have that video hosted by me.
Okay, you guys.
Yeah, so there's plenty of experimentation where I think it's excellent because we either proceed and go to market, or we come away with a ton of insights.
Great.
And so there's so many things behind the scenes where we've said, okay, this seems to deliver some value for a cohort of users, but like on balance, it's not really moving the marketplace to deliver more positive outcomes, more hires. So when we have that sort of key North Star, which enables us to make the right decisive call on a test and when to sunset something.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of experimentation behind the scenes, and certainly that will continue.
I love just in general the question and how much you can learn from those mistakes. So yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, it takes some real honesty within the company to be like, oh, it didn't work for this reason, because people always get defensive, right? And that's not the idea. It's to be like, oh, we thought this was going to work. This is where it worked well. This is where it broke. Whatever the case may be. Consumers didn't even use the way we thought. They have blue versus red. Who knows, right? It could be anything. Consumers are fickle. We are all fickle in our own fun, exciting way. So let's transition to marketing for a second. Right? You have both sides of the fence. How do you think about marketing to get employers to be posting, to employees to stay, and what other kind of marketing do you do from a brand perspective to kind of keep the name timely, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah, I mean, from a brand perspective, our campaign that I mentioned, The World Can Work Better, we've really approached it as a marketplace positioning, which is helping job seekers connect to employers, or job seekers who want better work connect to employers who are offering it. But it is hard. It is very hard to come up with like what is the message that's going to resonate on both fronts, and then just doing a lot of research with both job seekers and employers to understand like what does that mean and how do you connect them, and then working with Patrick's team on certain categories and how do you bring that to life to connect them.
Yeah, I think it is. We have this broad ambition of being the most preferred brand of choice in the labour market. So there's a lot of broad reach activities, really exciting stuff. Lots of exciting stuff in live sports, lots of partnerships, and you'll see us in the big like Sunday Night Football and like the big classic live events on streaming and linear. And then behind that, we think about liquidity of the marketplace, and we check in on that very, very in a very sophisticated way, very regularly. So we're looking at how many jobs are live of a particular type, where is the demand for certain candidates, and where is the supply, and always looking to balance that. So internally we think a lot about, we use a phrase called supply constrained, and essentially that means just not enough workers to fill the open roles. So a classic one that we face in the US is around healthcare. There's certain roles like physical therapists, particularly in rural areas, in massive demand, like year-round demand. So we're really focused from a targeting perspective on acquiring those kind of job seekers. So there's our broad bets that we make, and then there's like really forensic specific calculations we make to balance where we don't have enough jobs, we think, and where we don't have enough job seekers. So we're kind of always talking to each other from both sides of the marketplace, and that's actually kind of like intellectually quite a fun exercise, because that liquidity is always moving, and there's seasonality and lots of layers of kind of complexity.
So are there in some ways, and if I remember you correctly, are there in some ways almost thousands of campaigns that can be running? So you're talking about physical therapists in rural areas. Let's just assume for a second that you put them all together, all the rural areas, which is not the right thing to do, which is for simplicity purposes in this conversation we did. Is that like one campaign you'd run to try to find more professionals who have that background and be like, your skills are needed in this opportunity, you're interested? Is it not one-to-one necessarily, but like...
I mean, it's certainly, we have layers and layers on the paid acquisition side, at that almost at an occupational level.
Right.
So whether it's finance and accountant folks in Manhattan, or it's nurses, registered nurses in Georgia. So we really look at that. We do a ton of DNA testing on the employer side. So we'll do lots of holdout tests for like linear, for streaming, for AM, FM, for SMBs to post jobs on Indeed. So there's a lot of sophistication on both sides. We take slightly different approaches because the channels that are used to acquire SMBs tend to be slightly different to the job seeker ones, where we find kind of more the SEM programmatic is what we need at our scale.
So because the people looking for jobs are literally in the moment of looking, so it's easy to kind of like fine tune where the searching is coming from. Is that...
Yeah, we test and continue to do so, but certainly historically we found the broad reach platforms, Google, Meta, are the places where we're finding the job seekers. We found really interesting results on through testing on the SMB side. We actually found that like AM, FM, radio was like a really good driver for us of people posting jobs. Really surprising. And that surprised a lot of people internally. We did DMA holdout tests, and we're like, wow, there's like a super clear lift when we're in these linear audio spaces. So we're open to being wrong on hypotheses, and I'd say there's lots of testing on both sides.
Yep. Which leads to my last part of the question. You answered it perfectly, so well done. But how do you compare this? You answered it perfectly. How do you guys think about marketing? Like I use the word of like everybody's advertising with Google and Meta, right? They're the largest audiences, all make sense in the world, and yet every single day we're all reading other articles that are coming out about Google doing something wrong, right? There's lots of things you guys all read about. Meta with data privacy and the whole nine yards. They're important platforms, don't get me wrong, but how do you think about the omni-channel approach that way? Because to your point, radio had a lift, right? A meaningful lift. And Google in 2006 or 7, I think it was, came out with a full study showing how well display adds to search, right? Search is not the end-all be-all. It can't be the only thing you do. So let's end on that question. How do you guys think about it, big picture of whether you want to call it omni-channel or whatever you want to call
Like
it?
media mix model?
Yeah, media mix modeling or anything like that for you guys specifically at Indeed.
Yeah, I mean we have a media mix model, and so that's really what we've been leaning into over the last few years to determine our media mix, and we have shifted from a lot of the broad-based channels to being like more 90% of those channels to I would say around 40% versus 60% in digital, and it's every 6 months we're optimizing our mix based on behaviors and what we're seeing in return on spend.
Yeah, and it's also a blend, I think, of like the classic paid acquisition budgets, and then just an evergreen presence in places where people are searching for jobs. And one of the things we found is just seeing the trends of certain demographics searching for information in places like Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. That's a place where we want to be content-wise all the time to introduce them to the brand, to educate them on the brand. So there's also like a kind of fascinating interplay between like evergreen organic content versus like really targeted paid acquisition budgets. But that intellectual transfer is one of the reasons Jennifer and I have stayed in work for so long, because like every year, and then you layer that in a different country, like those dynamics are slightly different in Germany, they're slightly different in France, slightly different in India. So that's like a very interesting challenge for the planners and strategists on our team.
Cool. I think we have a longer than intended. Do we have time for questions or no? Yeah? Amazing.
I couldn't do that 2 weeks ago. Jump on.
Thank you very much. I love Indeed because, let's say, you can embody a humanized growth philosophy that, for example, the United Nations, backs. I heard also that you have the eyeballs of people, and I'm sure you have a mountain of data of the gap between what's needed out there job-wise and what are the current skills. So my question at the beginning was going to be a bit more of a equity analyst type of question, which I'm probably not going to ask. But how do you intend to monetize on that data, or how do you intend to use that data to put more content and reskilling content and learning content in line in the workflow that both the seekers and the givers of jobs are are looking for? Because I think you can play a massive, massive, massive role in the world can get better.
That's an awesome question, and a number of years ago we actually started an internal team within Indeed called Hiring Lab, and they do precisely that. They look at our data from more of an economist angle, an analyst angle, and then we actually work with publications, actually work with a lot of governments around the world. So we have the privilege of that data. It gives us a really interesting insight of where the labour force and economy is and perhaps where it's going. And we see these shifts underway. Jennifer mentioned it earlier. You've got certain countries with like stagnating population, aging workforce. One of the big things that we've seen is this huge demand for workers in healthcare in many of our biggest markets. And yet, certainly, increasingly, we're looking to design the product to be more of a career companion. And part of that is helping people through their career journey and making them aware of where they can get skills that are going to kind of future-proof them for the career ahead of them.